I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. The MAGA extremist loser candidate for governor of Arizona, Kari Lake, is now facing a very serious sanctions motion seeking over $700,000 in sanctions brought by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, as well as Governor-elect of Arizona, Katie Hobbs, for Kari Lake's filing of a completely frivolous lawsuit trying to challenge the outcome of the 2022 gubernatorial election in Arizona and to overturn the results to declare Kari Lake as the winner. That case was dismissed over the weekend by Judge Peter Thompson. Judge Peter Thompson previously dismissed 8 of the 10 causes of action that Kari Lake brought, but because the standard is you have to accept the allegations as true, Judge Peter Thompson allowed, for purposes of the pleading stage, the case to survive and go to an evidentiary hearing where Kari Lake's allegations were exposed as completely frivolous, completely without merit. Kari Lake's witnesses and purported experts had no clue what they were talking about. They weren't even getting to the central issue that was purportedly the basis of the claim that votes were intentionally changed, votes were intentionally manipulated, and that there was an intention and the outcome, in fact, changed the results of the election. Kari Lake didn't even attempt to prove any of those allegations. She just wanted to spread some conspiracy that the ballots were 20 inches, but actually they should have been 19 inches, and the 1-inch disparity is what led to this massive disruption in the elections, and therefore that somehow changed the result so that Katie Hobbs would win. 1, that's completely false. 2, there's no evidence of that. 3, there were minor printer errors that were fixed. And 4, it was just another election-denying MAGA extremist conspiracy spewed by Kari Lake, which ultimately had no evidence to support it whatsoever. And that was the finding by the judge. I mean, the judge over the weekend made the following findings regarding the claim by Kari Lake that there was a printer, tabulator, configuration, manipulation that took place that was illegal. The judge found the court does not find clear and convincing evidence of misconduct in violation of Arizona law. The court does not find clear and convincing evidence that such misconduct was committed by an officer making or participating in a canvass. C, the court does not find clear and convincing evidence that such misconduct was intended to affect the results of the 2022 general election, and the court does not find clear and convincing evidence that such misconduct did in fact affect the results of the 2022 general election. The other remaining claim by Kari Lake was a chain of custody violation, and the court made the same findings. The court did not find clear and convincing evidence of misconduct. The court did not find clear and convincing evidence that misconduct was committed by an officer making or participating in a canvass. The court did not find clear and convincing evidence that such misconduct was intended to affect the result of the election, and the court did not find clear and convincing evidence that such misconduct did in fact affect the result of the 2022 election. In response to losing before the sanctions motion was due, before the sanction motion was actually filed by Maricopa County and Katie Hobbs, Kari Lake, in her infinite MAGA wisdom, thought it made sense to spread another conspiracy theory about Judge Thompson, who would be ruling on the sanctions motion. And Kari Lake posted the following: the dismissal of Kari Lake's election lawsuit shows voter disenfranchisement no longer matters. And then it has this quote: legal experts believe that the decision by Judge Thompson was ghostwritten. They suspect top left-wing attorneys like Mark Elias emailed him what to say. By the way, Judge Peter Thompson is a Republican, the same way the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors is led by Republicans. Judge Peter Thompson, who made the ruling that I just read, was appointed by the Arizona Republican Governor Jan Brewer in 2010. Peter Thompson is a Republican appointee. Kari Lake is now accusing Peter Thompson of having his decision and order ghostwritten by Mark Elias and other left-wing operatives. That's the conspiracy theory that they want to spread. And by the way, that tweet, that post by Kari Lake made it into the sanctions motion that was filed. And it was one of the things that were pointed out as evidence that Kari Lake filed this to completely undermine integrity in our election, to undermine confidence in our democracy. Let me just read from you some of the key passages from the sanctions motion seeking at least $700,000 by Maricopa County and Katie Hobbs. This is what's in the motion. Before a single vote was counted in the 2022 general election, Kari Lake publicly stated that she would accept the results of the election only if she were the winning candidate. When all the votes were counted and the result of the election certified, establishing that Miss Lake had lost the election to defendant, contestee Katie Hobbs, plaintiff stayed true to her promise. But she has not simply failed to publicly acknowledge the election result. Instead, she filed a groundless 70-page election contest lawsuit against the governor-elect, the Secretary of State, and Maricopa County and several of its elected officials and employees, but no other county or its employees, thereby dragging them and this court into this frivolous pursuit. The section of Arizona's law which provides for sanctions was enacted with the express purpose of reducing groundless lawsuits. And this is surely such a lawsuit. That's what's written in the sanctions motion. Miss Lake and her counsel's sustained attack on Arizona election began well before this election contest when she filed a lawsuit against most of the defendants here that relied, among other things, on an allegation that Arizona does not use paper ballots. In this action, however, the bulk of her claims focused on complaints about those very same paper ballots, how they were printed at vote centers on election day. So you'll recall what's being referenced here is that Kari Lake, before the election even took place, with Alan Dershowitz as her lawyer, filed a case in federal court arguing baselessly that Arizona didn't even use paper ballots at all. And here their argument now is how the paper ballots were ultimately used, whereas she previously challenged that the paper ballots weren't even being used at all. In the previous lawsuit that was filed, she was sanctioned by the federal judge there as well. Her lawyers were sanctioned, that is. And so she's already filed a frivolous case in federal court, and now this is being referenced here as well. As we go on in the sanctions motions, the county writes the following. There is no question that Kari Lake's claims here were both groundless and not made in good faith. As noted above, Kari Lake had decided well before the election that if the results did not favor her, she would simply deny that they were legitimate, and she misused this court to do so. Even after this court dismissed the bulk of her claim and explained to plaintiff that she could not succeed on the remaining two claims without proving by clear and convincing evidence that defendants, 1, engaged in intentional misconduct, 2, designed to affect the result of the 2022 general election, and 3, that actually affected the result, Kari Lake still continued with this lawsuit, despite knowing she had no ability to meet her burden here. Kari Lake's claims were also made in bad faith, as demonstrated by her scattershot approach to litigation, her claims' lack of legal and factual merit, and this action's place as part of a larger scheme carried out by plaintiff to spread disinformation about the elections and the election results in Maricopa County. And she has not stopped. Despite this court's ruling, finding that Kari Lake had utterly failed to prove any of her claims yesterday, on December 25th, Miss Lake attacked this court's integrity. She tweeted, quote, the dismissal of Kari Lake's election lawsuit shows voter disenfranchisement no longer matters. Legal experts believe that Judge Thompson's decision was ghostwritten. They suspect by top left-wing attorneys like Mark Elias emailing him what to say. The motion goes on to say, as Arizona's House of Representatives Speaker Rusty Bowers testified to Congress about a statement that Rudy Giuliani made to him following the 2020 election, plaintiff here may have had a lot of theories. She just didn't have any evidence at all. Indeed, the entire purpose of this litigation was to plant baseless seeds of doubt in the electorate's mind about the integrity and security of the 2022 general election in Maricopa County. And while it is one thing to do so on TV or social media sites, it is another thing entirely to attempt to use the imprimatur of the court to achieve that goal. Plaintiff's obvious attempt to do so here merits sanctions. The conclusion. Courts are established by Arizona's Constitution and statutes to resolve actual disputes between parties. They do not exist so that candidates for political office can attempt to make political statements and fundraise. And they should not be used to harass political opponents and to sow completely unfounded doubts about the integrity of our elections. All of those things happened in this matter. Enough really is enough. It is past time to end the unfounded attacks on elections and unwarranted accusations against election officials. This matter was brought without any legitimate justification, let alone a substantial one. The Maricopa County defendants therefore asked this court to impose sanctions against plaintiff Kari Lake and her attorneys Brian Blem and Kurt Olson. So where that $700,000 number comes from is when you add up the sanctions being sought by Maricopa County as well as from Katie Hobbs. Because of the deadline of this motion set by the court on December 26th, because the court wanted to make sure that there is a final judgment, what the parties said in their sanctions motion is, look, for now, you can just order the sanctions from what took place at the evidentiary hearing, which will be $100,000, slightly more than that. But what we would also like to do is recover all of our fees from the proceeding and then to submit a statement of all of those fees for you at a later date. And there we estimate it to be, when you add up Katie Hobbs sanctions as well as the sanctions by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors and all of the defendants who were brought into this case, approximately $700,000. I think these were very powerful words used in the sanction motion here. And this is what we had been talking about on the MeidasTouch network, which really wasn't talked about in any of the large media networks at all. From the outset, when this case was filed, it was patently frivolous. And we went through with you all of the standards, what had to be proven here, the intentional manipulation of printing machines to change the results and proving that it actually did change the results. We talked about how these conspiracy theories by Kari Lake were intended just to sow doubts in the just overall free and fair election process in Arizona. And we really need these types of sanctions here. We really need these very stiff penalties here because we need to deter lawsuits from happening like this. One question that you may ask is regarding the lawyers, could the lawyers just get Kari Lake to basically pay her from money that's grifted off of the right-wing extremist cult members who they grift off of to take their money, essentially steal their money, making these accusations of election fraud that are without merit to try to raise money off of them? Could that be used to pay the sanctions from the attorneys? It couldn't. The attorneys have to show that they are the ones paying the sanctions. They couldn't do that. In terms of Kari Lake paying the sanctions, It's possible that she could go and dip into that to pay for her own sanctions. We'll have to see ultimately what the sanction order is here. Of note as well, though, Kari Lake has apparently removed the statement that she made about Judge Thompson, saying that his order was written by Mark Elias and other left-wing activists, or whatever the hell that tweet had said. That was removed, but I mean, you posted it before the sanctions motion was filed, so the court is going to read that that's what you said. The damage has been done. You can't unring the bell that you just rang very, very, very loudly. And, you know, again, when you were watching this evidentiary hearing and it was being broadcast on these right-wing echo chamber media, they were acting like Kari Lake was winning, and they were acting like these experts were doing a great job. And, you know, what's interesting is that there were some people, you know, part of a pro-democracy coalition who were just, I've noticed too, you know, before we started doing all of these videos, who were just a little confused, because when you watch the videos and you take these little sound bites out of context that these right-wing media try to drop on you, you're wondering, like, what's going on in the trial? They seem very confident that they're going to win. And any legal observer who's watching this objectively, you know, you're saying they're not even putting on evidence about what they need to put on evidence to win on these causes of action that they're asserting. They're not, all they're doing is just spewing more right-wing conspiracy theory stuff. They're not addressing any of the central issues here. And look, you have someone like Judge Peter Thompson, appointed by a Republican governor in 2010. This isn't a political, this shouldn't be a political issue. It should be about evidence. It should be about the facts at the end of the day. And evidence and facts is anathema to what MAGA is all about. MAGA extremism, the cult, is about dictatorship. It is about authoritarianism. It is about rejecting the rule of law. It is about just spreading fake news, spreading propaganda, just spreading these lies to their base. And it's a very weird, very strange, and very destructive thing to watch. But, you know, fortunately here, our legal system, our justice system, which is one of the key things we focus on here, is holding. Does it always hold? Do we get bad judges occasionally who are overcome by the kind of MAGA extremism that exists? Yeah, we've talked about them. We've talked about federal judges like Judge Eileen Cannon. We've talked about judges like the MAGA Judge Pittman. We've talked about some of these Trump judges across the country. But by and large, judges, lawyers, you know, have been able to, the judges, when I'm saying lawyers, judges, not these Trump lawyers who have basically sacrificed all of their ethics for these cases, but the judges have held it together, you know, and it's important that we have a fact and evidence-based system and that we truly support what the rule of law means. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your incredible support. So please hit the subscribe button now. And in addition, please check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. You'll love the exclusive content you can only get at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. But most importantly, help grow this independent media platform. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, It Wasn't Rigged, You're Just a Loser, at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.